Welcome to What in the World Astrology Wednesday. We're going to talk about the election in Germany on February 23rd, that snap election, who might win and why. We're also going to look at this era that we're in as the stationary motion of Mars on February 23rd corresponds to times in the world where peace was attained during times of war that had been ongoing, including World War II. We're going to see overlaps between themes of 1945 and 46, as well as 77 and 78 that are going to be replaying now, because what Mars has been doing in our sky since September 4th of 2024 and completing a whole narrative fully and in the end of Leo in June of 2025 is a repeat of 1945 fall to midsummer of 1946 and a repeat of 1977 September through to midsummer of 1978. And this is what we do in astrology. We look for pattern recognition. Mars heading into direct motion stationary will also do so in Leo and also do so at 17 degrees of Cancer on the sun of the United States of America, on the dog star Sirius. Happens to be that Elon Musk has his rising sign and Mercury at the same place. So his ascendant degree and Mercury are involved in the stationary motion of Mars going forward on the 23rd of February, as well as Donald Trump being a Leo rising and J.D. Vance being a Leo rising. Their energies are going to get into the mix because ultimately Mars is going back to Leo. And so things that Mars was doing in November and December are coming back again, as Mars will end up mid-April till mid-June in Leo. So this Mars focus will fixate a little on those world leaders. Last thing I want to mention is when Donald Trump had his birthday in June, his solar return ascendant was at the dog star point on the sun of the United States on the actual ascendant of Elon Musk. And as Mars stations direct at 17 degrees on the dog star, it activates the temporary solar return ascendant of Donald Trump. So we keep seeing many signs and correlations that this administration was quite a destined event in our world, if not a timeline shift. But we're going to talk about what this might mean as I look at the station direct Mars story and I compare it to the historical reference points. Now, before we begin, and we're going to do Germany at the very end, I'm going to try to keep this to 45 minutes. If you like world astrology, this is the What in the World Wednesdays. If you like all signs content about your life and your sign, look to my Monday drops, my Thursday drops, and my Sunday drops, and you'll get your all signs details in those videos, not in this one. Also, if you want to jump aboard my Venus retrograde class, March 1st to April 12th, it's quite affordable. Discount code LIBERATE20 is in effect until the 22nd of February. If you want to jump in at an early bird discount price, come join in. And all the descriptions of the curriculum of the courses in the description box as well. All right, so let's get going. Number one, I'm just going to very quickly show you a picture of something. Alrighty? Couple of pictures. I want you to get the lay of the old land. First of all, I want you to understand why this is a kind of a rare Mars station direct. What's so rare about February 23rd? You see, and by the way, this is coming out on Wednesday, and then on Thursday, the all signs for the Mars direct is going to be released. So stay tuned for that. This is what I want you to understand very briefly. Take a screenshot if you prefer. You know, Mars will retrograde every couple of years in a sign. Like in 2020, he spent 6 months retrograde in Aries. In the fall of 22 to 23 spring, he spent 6 months in and out retrograde, direct retrograde in the bounds of Gemini. All right, so this is not unusual. Every couple of years, Mars gets sort of stalled out in one sign and spends quite a bit of time there. And as you might notice here, that this is a system of what we have historically encountered during Mars retrogrades in the sign of Cancer and Leo. Okay, so he retrogrades in this kind of a rhythm through Cancer and Leo sky. And you'll have to go back to 1992 to 93 or 1960, 61 on those dates to see the containment of a retrograde within the sign of his detriment, the sign of his fall in Cancer, where he can be a patriot, a nationalist, a fierce defender of homeland, but also emotional. So you can look at those times as a pure version of Mars retrograding within the bounds of direct and then retrograde, spending a lot of time in the bounds of Cancer. However, If we want to look at the way it's happening right now, where it's also connected to Leo, kings and leaders and performers and people of celebrity and stature in the world, the solar figures, we have to go back to September the 7th, 1945 to April the 22nd of 1946. And that would have been a comparative time to August 31st of 1977 to April 11th of 1978. And in fact, I could extend that April 11th of 78 till June when he entered back into the sign of Leo. And I could extend that September 7th, 1945 to mid-June, because April 22nd of 45 to mid-June, he was back in Leo. So really, you could even extend those dates. But it's to understand the vibe is like 77 fall through to summer of 78, like fall of 45 to April of 1946. Well, I think a lot of you know various things happened during the August of 1945 timeframe. What happened at that juncture was that we had the dropping of the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think that was August the 9th or so. And then peace deals were made in September to end the war, with the Japanese surrendering. So what I'm bringing up to the table here is that wars coming to an end can be a theme of this story. And I am not saying all wars will end. We do have two wars going on that's got our attention, which is the Middle East and Ukraine, Russia. I can guarantee the Ukraine, Russia thing is gone. It is complete. It is done. It's like dead on the vine. It's like flowers in a vase with no root structure. So that is going to definitely close out. But we see the ends of wars, right? Because in 1977, 78, we also saw the ends of wars. So for example, and you have to remember that in 1945, Russia was an ally, right? So Russia was a part of ending that war. And that we've got a lot of Russia going on right now, and Trump trying to, make a deal, so to speak. But in 1977, 78, we also had wars going on, and that wars that came to an end as well. So we had a conflict in Cambodia. It's called the Cambodian-Vietnamese War, which ended in 1978 after this Mars retrograde through the sign of leaders and the sign of home and homeland, Cancer. So a Cambodian-Vietnamese War finally came to a close, which is not a bad idea, right? Also, we had a war going on between Ethiopia and Somalia that was in play through July of 77 to March of 78, but then came to a close. Okay, so again, wars ending during cycles in which we have a Mars through the home and homeland, Cancer, very emotional, and Leo for leaders, and hopefully, closing up of wars. Okay. And by the way, the Soviet Union was supported Ethiopia and ended its support for Somalia during that war. We keep seeing a lot of Soviet Union involvement in the war stories in 45, 46 and 77, 78, which is why I'm pretty well sure we're going to see a closure of those wars. And so that's one thing I want to mention. But what other kinds of bookends can we make, that are just intriguing? Well, the United States gave up the Panama Canal on September 7th, 1977. And, I showed you that chart that we just had up, and I can pull it up one more time. But if you look at 1977, it was August 31st that Mars moved into Cancer, home and homeland territory, fighting, separating, dividing, cutting. And the United States agreed in a contract with Panama to give up the canal under Jimmy Carter on September 7th, 1977. The transfer happened as we moved into the next century, when we moved into the 2000s. But it literally was an agreement that was made at that point. So now we see Donald Trump trying to reclaim the Panama Canal. That is a bookend. Often these cycles work as bookends or pattern repetitions. Carter also created in the fall of 1977 the U.S. Department of Energy. A completely new entity was formed. And some of you might also realize, of course, that Donald Trump has formed the Department of Government Efficiency, D.O.G.E. So again, the formation by Carter and now Trump of a brand new a brand new entity within the government is something that we've seen on a repeating pattern. And of course, in 1945, 46, if someone wants to do the research, I have no doubt the United States formed some new agency, probably the atomic agency, the nuclear agency of the United States, because now nuclear weapons had been devised. So if you go back, you'll find that 90% likely there was another agency formed. Being me, I couldn't leave it. I had to go take a look and research it for us. And I found the answer. And there's always something that repeats and repeats. So back in August of 1945 through to January of 1946, again, we had that cycle of the Leo Cancer movement of Mars. We had the creation in the United States of the establishment of the National Intelligence Structure. So that would be stuff, I think, to do with like stealth agencies, like, the CIA. So it's called the National Intelligence Structure was formed. Well, the Office of Strategic Services was dissolved in September. The Office of Strategic Services was a precursor to the Central Intelligence Agency. The CIA was actually established in 1947, but the baseline for the CIA came off of that time frame where we had the United States creating the Office of Security. So the State Department expanded the Office of Security after World War II, and the office was known as SY for 4 decades. It later became the Bureau of, okay. So there was a change. According to my research, War Stabilization Board was also established in 1945. There's a lot of that kind of repeating history. And if you were really to look into more of it, which I'm not going to do today, you'll see that there are things that were established that will be like the Department of Government Efficiency repeating patterns. Like the Department of Energy, which Carter created. Now, a couple other things that happened in the 77, 78 timeframe, for example, that could be interesting repeats in a positive way, is a Concorde did its first New York City to London, flight. We may see more stuff with things that Elon Musk or other people are doing with rockets or high orbit vehicles to get people from place to place and start making them commercially available. And that could be something that develops over the course of between now and June as an announcement. Now, also in the Middle East, Anwar Sadat of Egypt did the first time an Arab visited Israel to talk to Menachem Begum to create a peace settlement between Egypt and Israel. So because we saw in November 19th of 1977, a rare, unusual bid for peace in the Middle East that broke precedent, we may see something like that trying to happen. I can only hope. December 18th, there was a flight crashing into the ocean and people drowned. So we've seen some of that repeating already. That happened in 1977. And I can't remember the airline, but just trust me, I wrote these down as ways to look for repeating patterns. Funny enough, in November of 1977, the first time they found an asteroid outside the solar system that they identified as a centaur body, which was Chiron, on November 1st, 1977. So there's a thing about the chironic wound and discovering Chiron, the one that represents the wound right now in Aries, the war wound. But back then, that discovery is just an interesting thing. So celestial astronomical discovery is a theme that may still repeat or occur between now and June, mid-June, when this cycle of Cancer and Leo comes to a close. Finally, I want to mention one more thing. So connected to the 1945-46 cycle, all right, that occurred back there when we look at the Middle East and potential wars or conflicts there and what could be shifting, that was back when President Truman gave his support for the creation of a state of Israel in the 1945-46 Mars-Leo transit. So that was the beginning of the actual creation of the state of Israel. So it was May of 1946. So we still had that transit happening between Cancer and Leo of Mars that had begun in the fall of 1945. And Truman announced his approval of a recommendation to admit 1,000 displaced persons into Palestine, but also in October of that year to publicly declared his support for the creation of a Jewish state. So it put in motion the idea of carving out a piece of land for Israel in the land of Palestine. Of course, we all know there was then displacement of Palestinian peoples called the Nakba, or the disaster that occurred, including the death, displacement, the taking of towns, the reclaiming of land, that belonged to other people, and the dispossession of a people. So at their peril, with death and mayhem and massacre involved. So just so you know, this was not a peaceful transfer of land power. Just check your historical records. So we had the inciting energy between the Leo Mars story of the nation of Israel's formation in 45, 46 in the post-World War II era. Now, what happened in 1977, 78 that connects us back to Middle East themes that we might want to pay attention to as we wonder aloud if there's going to be something shifting? Well, there's a lot going on. When we got to the end of that year of 1978, we had the Camp David Accords, and the Israel-Arab peace process was underway. Now, that was a pivotal moment in history, and of course, it didn't lead to an ultimate solution, but there was that attempt for peace during the aftermath of the Mars-Leo, Mars-Cancer story. Also, Lebanon was under a great deal of stress at the same time in the 77-78 period in a war with Israel, and it was called the South Lebanon conflict. And it's also the first Israeli invasion of Lebanon. And it was called Operation Litani by Israel. They love their names, right? Iron Swords. How about just Operation Genocide in Gaza? Yes, I have an opinion. This is my channel. And so basically, you ever hear of disproportionate asymmetrical warfare and disproportionate response, and also lack of goodwill to actually find a solution? So basically, there was also a major massacre that happened in 1978 March during the Mars transit through Cancer in that cycle, and it was called the Coastal Road Massacre in Tel Aviv by Palestinian militants based in Lebanon. So we had strife in the Middle East. There was that Lebanon story. Lebanon is a Virgo rising. The South Node is moving through the Virgo rising, part of Lebanon's ascendant. In historical times, this has led to civil war or strife with neighbors, with Lebanon and Israel in particular. We may see this fallout as a continuing problem between Lebanon and Israel over the course of this year, especially given it's got precedent with the Mars transit. Now, that's enough of that. We're going to also look at the German story. What I wanted to tell you about here is how the Panama Canal is a bookend from the Mars transit through Cancer and the surrendering of the canal to Cancer Leo, and now Trump wants it back, right? President Madison is the closest combination astrologically to the election factors around Donald Trump. And some of you know that Madison was also about grabbing land and land grabs, and also tariffs. And so it's almost an eerie repeat of the astrological sky of the Madison era. I've covered this in other videos, and it's not surprising that Trump wants to claim Canada and Greenland and the Panama Canal. Now, he will not claim Canada as a 51st state. Astrologically, that doesn't seem likely, actually. But what he will try to do most likely is co-opt Canada into allowing more participation in the policing and the military structures in the north of Canada, in our Arctic area, where we have the potential for Russia or China to establish some ground. And that would be a normal thing for the United States to want to secure. And Canada's military doesn't actually have enough military to do that. So I think a lot of this could be about that. We'll see. But I don't think that this is a realistic outcome. Canada would say, yeah, like make us this giant chunk of land, and with all of our provinces, 10 of us, 10 provinces, and Northwest Territories is up there, that we would do that. So that's not going to happen, but I'll keep tracking the astrology and the developments. Madison didn't get every bit of land he wanted either. All right, so we have land grabs, we have tariffs again, just like President Madison in the 1800s. And so this is, I think, the fourth president, and he was the fourth president of the United States. Okay, so let's talk about Germany. Let me tell you what I know about Germany. And I know that when I'm listening sometimes to readers and astrologers talk about Canada, like, you guys got it wrong, because this is my country, right? I know what's going on here. All right. So in my last What in the World Wednesday, I covered the Mark Carney winning the leadership race, and he will win. but not winning against Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative Party leader, although he will close the gap and make it a tighter race than had Trudeau still stayed in power, but Trudeau has resigned. Now, I think that one of the reasons the Conservative Party will still win, whether it's a small majority or not even that, a minority government, is because the tides are shifting around the world towards what some people call fascism, but also conservative values and conservative values. Some people say fascism, some people say totalitarianism, strong arm men policies like Mussolini, like Hitler, like Stalin. That's because all of the Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin stuff happened when Uranus was moving through Taurus. Uranus is back in Taurus since 2018, May, and then full time in the spring of 2019, leaving in 2027, full time leaving. This is an indication that these years have led to more regimes in the world becoming populist, strong man, strong arm, conservative values. Some could say fascism. J.D. Vance just did a speech at the Security Council thing, the Security Summit in Germany, that shocked the world as he pointed to the totalitarian, lack of free speech, and kind of fascist way that the German government had been running its government. And I had a chance to watch an interview with a progressive party, a female, who's not, it's kind of like when RFK tried to get in the mix in the Democrats and they shut him out and he couldn't even get airtime with the mainstream media. Well, the same thing actually is happening in Germany. The Progressive Party that's been formed, called MERA, MERA, with a female head of it, a lawyer lady, can't get airtime coverage. She tweeted out that she thought that the situation between Israel and Palestine was a genocide in the making, and she was then forced out of her job or something. So there's this kind of like psychosis going on, in my humble Canadian opinion, in Germany. Maybe it's collective guilt over, the Holocaust. And now, Israel could launch a nuclear bomb at a country and decimate people, like in Iran. If they try to destroy nuclear facilities, it will cause a radiation blast like Chernobyl. And the Germans would be like, all good. You can't do anything wrong. Guys, you're like, we did bad stuff to you, so we'll support all the bad stuff you want to do in the world. So there's a really far right party that apparently Elon Musk prefers. There's a centrist party, and then there's a progressive party like MERA, that I know, MERA. And I do realize that MERA has no chance in hell of getting any foothold there, but they're more progressive and they're looking for more left-wing solutions to problems. But I find it interesting that some people think to be conservative or right-wing or conservative values is to be totalitarian, populist, or fascist. That's not true. In Canada, our Liberal government shut down free speech. Our Liberal or progressive government taxed us. Our Liberal progressive government debanked Canadian citizens who supported a peaceful protest of truckers and debanked the truckers themselves. These hard-ass tactics are totalitarian. And you could argue, I don't care, fascist. So moving your perception a bit is important. Don't think that because someone is Democrat, liberal, or progressive, that they are not necessarily free from locking down freedom of speech, punishment, groupthink types of, 1984 Orwellian groupthink tactics, because our Canadian government did that to the people. All right. So if you weren't vaccinated in our Canadian society, and 6 million people didn't vaccinate, and now I'm glad they didn't, they were not allowed to travel on a train or a plane within their country. Someone could die, your mother could die across the country. Unless you had a car, you were screwed. So there were so many harsh restrictions that polarized the people during our pandemic. So the way our government ran the pandemic was more controlling than any other country in the world in terms of how unvaccinated citizens were treated. So there is a lot here to say when I go into the astrology of Germany, and I'm going to do that now. I am just telling you that you cannot pigeonhole left and right and make evil left or evil right and vice versa. It doesn't work that way. There's no angels in the Democrat Party that Biden financed the genocide. All right. You take it or leave it. It happened. And Biden wasn't really cognitively there to do that. So I don't know who was really running that show. So when I'm looking at Germany, I don't know enough about it. I'm not a citizen there, but I do know that there seems to be, as J.D. Vance said in his speech, that shocked everybody, some kind of like freedom of speech crackdown and control that you could argue is somewhat totalitarian. right? And so now I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at Germany's natal chart, and I'm going to look at what I can find for the leader of the centrist party and the leader of the far right party. And I know that the Progressive Party lady will have nothing, the Mara Party. They're like toast, right? So I'm going to grab those charts. We're going to get back and we're going to finish up the sky. I think probably the centrist party will win and maybe co-opt support from the far right party, and kind of pile up together. But it's a snap election as well, which they only had a few of those. I think the last German snap election was 2005. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. And let's go ahead and take a look at the German story. Okay, this is a bait and switch. I just did some research and there's like 14 parties in Germany. Like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, seriously, the Social Democrat Party, the Christian Coalition Party, or something like that. It's just way too much. I'm not going to try to track down the birth charts of every candidate in that election. It just makes me want to, throw up. Instead, I'm going to look at the chart of Germany, and I'm going to give you a gist of Germany. Like, what is Germany? What is happening in Germany? What's going on with the soul of Germany? There are two charts to use: the May 24th, 1949, chart, and then there's also the October 3rd, 1990, which is a reunification chart of Germany, East and West. So we'll look at both of those. We'll talk about the soul of Germany. We'll talk about what's trying to happen in Germany as a nation, rather than me pick one of the candidates, because I don't want to look through 12 candidates or 10 candidates, et cetera, and try to figure out each person's chart, which we won't have birth times for. So let's take a look at the soul of Germany rather than picking a winner in this election. Obviously, as I said, my perception as a Canadian looking at Germany is that Germany has had some kind of mass psychosis formation, where no matter what the nation of Israel is doing, no matter how badly behaved they are, no matter how terrible it all is, they are unequivocally not only supportive of it, but if you talk against the actions of a nation which is a Zionist nation, you are called an anti-Semite. Well, anti-Semitism is meaning you have some, hatred or bias against a person of the Jewish faith. That's different than you don't like the actions of a warring nation based on a religious Zionist platform. So, that kind of totalitarian clamping down on anyone who dares to dissent or comment on the actions of Israel in Germany makes me concerned that it is going into more of a totalitarian archetype. Let's grab the chart. Am I recording? Yeah, let's grab the first one, which is the 1949 chart from May 24th at 12 a.m. All right, guys, I got it ready to go. First of all, this is the original chart for Germany that I can grab on online data sources from 1949. And hang on. May 24th, 1949, 12 a.m. in Bonn, Germany. It is a Capricorn rising, very industrious energy for a nation, as you can see. And you might notice that there's a little asteroid on top of that ascendant, and that's Mors Somnus. Now, that's an interesting placement for a nation that came off of a huge, terrible war. I think I might have lost your screen share, but Mors Somnus is actually binary. It's a binary. This body was named after the Roman Moors and Psalmists, twin gods of the underworld, children of night and darkness. Moors, known as Thanatos, is a personification of death. Somnus, hypnos, of sleep. Powerful unconscious forces impacting one's life, awareness of the precarious balance of life and death. So when you consider what happened in the war with the Holocaust and that death energy and the unconscious urges that are with Thanatos, the death urge, that doesn't surprise me that this nation ends up with that strange consideration on the ascendant itself. Also, in the land of the soul of this nation from the 1949 post, war chart, we have some other interesting asteroids to speak of. This is the asteroid Grieve. Okay, grieve is what it sounds like, to grieve, something sad, something worthy of sorrow. Connected to death in the 8th house of death, connected to Saturn, the lord of time and karma and death himself, the grim reaper. So we have a nation with the 8th house of death filled with grief. We also have Saturn on on the little star, on the little king star, Regulus, little king. In Latin, it means Regulus means little king. Donald Trump has his ascendant on Saturn in the chart of the original chart of Germany, which is interesting. And basically, this is a very powerful star, but it's in a very difficult house, and it is connected to Pluto, the god of death, and of course, grief. Now, underneath all of that, we also can see over here the asteroid America on the descendant of this nation. America would play a major role in the formation of Germany in the post-World War II timeframe, which is true. And so you have America right on the asteroid in the house of important life partners or partners in life. Finally, you can see that this is the asteroid Libitina on Uranus. It's a funeral asteroid, and it's connected to the sixth house of bad fortune, but in a nation's house, it's also the workforce. And so we do have that on Uranus. And we also might notice that the sun itself sitting here is connected to another asteroid called Hera. She's a goddess that was the wife of Zeus or Jupiter. So it's about like Juno and Jupiter. Juno and Hera, same goddess by different cultures, Greek and Roman. There's always a thing when I look at that Juno and Hera energy, it's really about what part of us wants to unite in partnership with others, because that's Juno here and that's Hera. So when it comes to the work, the labor force, and the economy kind of the labor markets of a country, the sixth house, there's a lot of the word partnership going on here. So it could be international partnerships in rebuilding the country, for example, contracts by engineers to rebuild destroyed cities, etc. So, and of course, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank were all created as Bretton Woods institutions post-World War II. And a lot of that was about countries like the United States getting involved in the rebuilding of devastation and rebuilding of economies and infrastructures in countries like Germany. Now, we can talk about the dark side of those agencies anytime. My husband worked for the World Bank and the United Nations, but we won't do that now. So that's the kind of the archetypes within the chart. This is also a chart with a lot of major stars that are active in the sky that make me wonder if this nation actually knew astrology when they chose to create the chart of the United States of this nation, because of the stars that are present here and that are quite powerful and quite important. So the south node is on Spica and the south node is on Arcturus, two very, very blessed stars, but also Neptune is up there. It's almost like there's this kind of hypnosis that Neptune can create in the leadership energies or the visible reputation of the country. Finally, let's talk about what's going on with this chart and the current sky and what's going on in the election story of this nation. So, well, first of all, the soul of the nation. Let's go with the idea of the soul of the nation just for a minute, right? We are looking at Pluto moving through the sign of Aquarius, the second house of the nation, and this could make Germany wealthy. Germany is not a wealthy nation right now. And so Germany could become extremely wealthy and industrious over the course of the next 19 years as Pluto moves through the second house of the coffers of the nation. With Jupiter meeting Pluto, Pluto-Jupiter is a millionaire yoga. So there's a sense as Pluto goes over Jupiter of this original natal Germany chart, there is a potential for a direction between now and 1944 for Germany to suddenly become financially way more resourceful. I'm not sure what could precipitate that, whether it'd be like an AI economy, a digital economy, but there's a lot of eldering people there. It's not a growing nation. There's a lot of kickback, a pushback, I understand, against immigrants, and that's happening worldwide. So they're not alone in that. Also, back in 2022, August 1st, there was a conjunction of Uranus, Mars, and the North Node on the fifth house Mars of the nation of Germany. And that was a once in every 3,000 year kind of triple conjunction. And Mars getting activated, Mars is passive. Mars is Taurus, the bull, plowing the fields. So a nation who went to World War II comes up with a natal chart with a Mars who's much more, let's till the soil, let's not go to war. But when that Mars was activated by that triple conjunction, it also means that Mars's ownership homes, the places that he rules in the chart, sorry for that dinging, the ninth house of the international community and legislative and law within the country, and also Mars, the ruler of the fourth house of home and homeland, also will have collateral activations from that storyline. So there's a lot of shifting energies there around home, homeland, and the international community probably in play. What really stands out for me? Jupiter's about to move in June, the seventh house of this country. And the seventh house flows to the midheaven, which is the leadership and those in leadership positions. So there's something about a rise to power of some. This is June 9th, right? I mean, the election will happen before then, but an escalation of prominence for the nation of Israel with people that it would consider partners, and its own leadership, partnering with other countries, being aligned with other powerful or wealthy countries in some positive way. But also because Jupiter, October 9th at a year, will cross over the asteroid America. It indicates America will have a strong influence in the policies of the government of Germany going forward. And even though J.D. Vance's comments were completely unwelcome in that German summit that just happened, the security meeting or whatever it's called, at the end of the day, this chart suggests that Jupiter going over America will indicate more influence of the United States in the policy making of whichever government is going to win this election. I know that someone says Elon Musk likes this far right party over there and has supported it. Okay, so but I'm not going to look at every single party's leaders, and we're just going to talk about the zeitgeist of the chart. You know, Mars is the ruler of that midheaven for this nation, and it's very possible that because of that activation of Mars on the IC in 2022, but also to some degree also from July 15th of 2025, Mars Uranus energy can only activate the IC or the fifth house or the bottom of the chart of the nation of Germany 3 times in every 84 years. And last time it happened was in the 1930s. And so the nation didn't exist under this chart at the time, so we can't compare it. But I will say that there's a lot of energy going through the sort of the root and the expression of this country to change something up, to do some dramatic changing. So let's just call it that. And we'll see. Uranus, as I said, through Taurus has created fascism, Stalin, Mussolini, et al. And some people can describe the control that the government is having in terms of thought and speech of its people. Because actually in polling, apparently the people's like 60% of the people think that, the government, it's like, should not be, sending military aid to Israel based on what's happening in Gaza, but the government's not listening to the people, apparently. I just saw that on a talk show, the conversation with people in Germany. So let's also go ahead and look at the other chart and see what I can come up with. Donald Trump's Leo rising identity just overlaps, and so does Leo, J.D. Vance, with that 8th house, which is the other people's money house of a nation. In other words, when a nation wants to get money from another country or any other place, right? Borrow money, create agreements around finances and stuff. We're looking at 8th house stories. And so Donald Trump's ascendant on Saturn in the chart of Germany, as well as J.D. Vance also having his Leo ascendant here, indicates that Trump and Vance will have great influence at this time in the policies of that government. And that would have been true, of course, during Trump's first term as well. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the next story, which is the reunification chart for Germany. This is when East Berlin and the Berlin Wall fell and East and West Germany came together. That 1990 chart will have some merit. Let's take a look at it. All right, so we're going to look at the 1990 sky for Berlin, is where this reunification thing happened. The online data says 12 a.m. I don't know how accurate this is for rising sign stuff, but I'm just going to go with it since it seems to be the public data charts that are in use. And here we have it. So this is basically a sky that shows a Leo rising. That's completely a different temperament than the Capricorn rising of the original chart that we looked at, but I think both charts will be useful. You'll notice that as a Leo rising, we have this 29-degree that was in the original chart, Grieve, the asteroid Grieve. It's still here. And in fact, it puts the 8th house of the original chart over the 1st house of the second chart, meaning that house of death and that grieving thing that is in Pluto, Saturn, Grieve, that's in the original 1949 chart, now falls smack dab on the Leonine ascendant of this country. This country also is a Leo rising, which is what J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are. And we also have Mars stationing or moving direct on February 23rd, the day of the election. And Mars will be moving forward in Cancer, but eventually coming forward in mid-April to mid-May to mid-June into Leo. So there's a lot about the backroom deals and negotiations right now in the chart of this country from this more recent chart that makes me wonder, what backroom deals and negotiations might be happening regarding the outcome of this election. And having, Mars in the original chart as a Cap rising, basically doing the whole back and forth crossing through the seventh house of Germany, is where Germany has to look out for hidden enemies or people crossing, not hidden, open enemies and adversaries crossing their path. Literally like, the countries that would oppose Germany are being very obvious to Germany at this point. It maybe J.D. Vance is a case in point. But also, yeah, we'll leave it at that. This chart also puts the United States, asteroid America, at the root of this chart. And since 1990, the influence of America is at the root of the policies of this country, but also the third house represents social media, but media outlets, an announcement the government makes to its people being highly influenced by the asteroid America. It's just there. I'm not saying it's my opinion. The midheaven here, our high noon, is not Scorpio, it's Aries. You have to laugh or not laugh because Scorpio midheaven is a war midheaven, but more stealthy, CIA and spy-like. But this is a real war midheaven. It's Aries. It's both Mars ruled as Scorpio original chart, but now midheaven and Aries. So we're going to see the warrior archetype involved both times, which is just fascinating to me. Mars in the chart of this 1990 operation is over here in Gemini. So Mars and Gemini can often be a sign of civil war, but this is also the chart of the nation. And so it's really about its groups, its factions and groups that occur within its public. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Aquarius is moving through the seventh house of Germany, meaning Germany will acquire wealthy, influential, and rich people, allies, partnerships. Okay, so this is like Donald Trump getting Elon Musk and all of tech bro valley on his side, right? For oligarchy. Well, Germany has this way to attract wealthy influence and partnerships to its realm over the next 19 years. We saw the same wealth building capacity in the 1949 chart. So whatever else I can say, Germany is going to be moving towards building its wealth and its stature financially and its power in the world, even though it seems like a bit player, right? Even though it does seem like that to us at this point. So the nation of Israel is a Libra rising. And in this chart, Israel's ascendant is on America, the 24-degree asteroid. And America and Israel are having a huge influence at the root of this country's visible leadership. So, and we know that to be true at this point on the visible surface as well. And in the original chart that I had, when we looked at the Capricorn rising nature of the narrative, that means that the nation of Israel as a Libra rising falls into the 10th house where that Neptune was, the illusion, the delusion, the hypnosis, the psychosis regarding the nation of Israel. Because in the other chart, we looked at Neptune and Israel and its ascendant were up at the top of the sky with the South Node. And the South Node is a place of karma and karmic relationships. And Israel, of course, is where many refugees from the war ended up. Not all of them. In fact, most are in America. But, the idea of the karmic relationship that Israel has to the nation of Israel from the travesty and the tragedies of the Holocaust shows up clearly in the 1949 chart with the nation of Israel's ascendant overlapping the 10th house and Neptune and South Node in the visible reputation of the country of Germany. So all said and done, when I look at this chart, I think about what kind of election is going to happen. Well, I mean, just having the 10th house itself, which represents the house of leadership and leaders, being a Taurus ruled house, Taurus is conservative. It's fixed. It is around the traditional values. And that could indicate, of course, to me that we won't see an election result here because we've had all that Uranus and that Mars action since 2022, 2020, 2024 with Mars-Uranus conjunction. So there's a shakeup in the type of leadership Germany is presenting that it wants in this lifetime to the world. And I think because of the conjunction of Mars and Uranus on Algol on July the 15th, opposite Juno in the fourth house of this chart. And the fourth house, by the way, for a nation is the party out of power. So like the party that's trying to win power, like get into power. Now it sounds like there's 25 parties in Germany, but the point is that the snap election resulted from the goddess of partnerships in the house of the opposing party getting activated from an Algol Mars conjunction on July 15th. The same conjunction that led to the assassination attempt against Trump. So shakeups are here. And with Venus being the 10th house ruler and Venus being ready to move into her retrogradation on March 1st after the election through the 10 degrees of Aries, that's a humdinger. Mars stationing to retrograde on March the 1st at 10 degrees Aries on the midheaven right now. Oh my goodness. It's kind of like, it maybe does indicate that a party that has been very powerful already, like from the past, is going to be reclaiming power. So I'm going to stop the share. I don't know enough about the German politics. And honestly, as much as I'd like to read about all 12 parties and figure it out, here's my final word. Doing my due diligence, here's what I want to say. Now I understand the dynamic. So Scholz is coming off the old centrist line, and nobody wants it anymore. The Angela Merkel, people are upset in Germany about immigrants, especially Muslim immigrants, et cetera. It's very much what's going on in the United States as well. And then the alternate parties is this woman, Alice, and some guy named Tino for the alternate AfD party that that Elon Musk thinks will save Germany. And it's really hardcore, getting immigrants out of the country or something like that. On the other hand, this other guy, Merz, M-E-R-Z, who's 69 years old, which is a 10th house profection age, which can lead to career success. We don't have birth times for these people, is the one who says, I'm going to move to the right with my party so that we can accommodate the worries of the people and sort of take away the populist appeal of the AfD party. And yet, when I look at the charts of Alice, and I'm drawn to her because of the Venus retrograde station on the midheaven of the unification chart for Germany, then I'm having a suspicion that a little bit like no one thought Donald Trump would win, that indeed there may be a more populist move towards the conservative AfD party than people would expect it. So also, and this is the chart, not Merz, M-E-R-Z, Freidrich Merz. This is this chart without a birth time, so don't pay attention to the birth time. But I want to say one thing for you astro geeks out there: update save chart without a time. We can still use what's called a solar chart, and that is to pretend that the sun is in the first house, and you get a lot of information just from doing that. And a solar chart is a valid way of understanding the sky. And when we do online stuff on YouTube, when we say listen for your sun, moon, and rising, it's exactly what we're doing. We're giving you a solar chart reading. So, sun, okay, come on. The software is acting so slow. I just want to get our sun back here. All right. As if his sun is a Scorpio first house placement. Okay. But what I look at his chart and say his sun got renewed, a renewed lease on life from Mars's conjunction on November 17th in Scorpio to the sun. So he's on a 2-year reset button with Mars's support that hasn't happened since 1993. So 1991 to 93. So there's something about the life of M-E-R-Z, Freidrich Merz. It's going to have a major reset of his career with the sun. He's at the 10th house, 69th year profection age. We don't know what his 10th house really is, but from a solar chart, it's Leo, king and leader. His Jupiter, when he was born, is at Regulus, born to rule, little king, power and authority. Sadly, Jupiter Pluto can often look like tyranny and narcissism and hyper control. All right, just so you know. But he could end up with this kind of solar chart looking like a winner. The other element going on here is in the reunification chart of Germany, which presents the nation of Germany as a Leo rising. The identity of the country could be in alignment with a solar chart leadership by this fella. So there is a potential for that to actually work. And even though we don't have a birth time, I can see some real synergy between Merz and his chart and the chart of the the reunification of the nation of the country. One more thing I'd say about this too is that there is a possibility that this Alice woman is also very strong. I'm not putting her, I'll put her chart over his for a minute, like as if they were in competition. She is the co-person, co-leader of the AFD party, which is the one that Musk likes. Come on, Alice, where are you? So pretend they were competing with each other. Yes, this is not our solar chart, but just let's move her to the solar chart. Give me a minute. Select, recently used. We put two solar charts over each other, and then we'll make it a little bit more of a comparison. Let's get her into a solar chart mode as well. Oh, give me a minute. Software is doing its thing. Moving in slow motion. Moving in slow motion. Yeah, I think I think I need a new laptop. One more to go. Okay. All right. So as if she's an Aquarius rising, solar chart with no birth time, that's the second way to do it, right? And we can say a few things about her too. With the Leo rising nature of the reunification chart of Germany, and we use a solar chart, it puts her seventh house placements connected to the identity of the nation. That's just a very strong self and other axis. We see that she may that we don't have a time of birth. We can't really look at a midheaven at all in this kind of solar chart, but we could say that she has a Gemini moon, which is how she could or could not be popular with the people, which falls into the third house, the media and the social media of the country, of the reunification chart of the nation, and the sixth house of the labor markets of the original chart, the laboring people, the everyday people of the first chart for Germany in 1949. So she's got a lot of popular appeal based on both ways of looking at it. She must be like inspiring the masses or something. Her North Node conjunct America. There's a support from Elon Musk, perhaps. Musk is a Cancer rising. And from her solar chart perspective, his ascendant here is in the middle degrees, like 15 degrees or so of Cancer. Then Musk's ascendant in her chart is in a relationship of a sextile to her node of fate and the asteroid America. There's that connection with Musk. Okay, so my view of this chart, and let's put over the other fella, Merz. So let's say they were in a contest or they were trying to get along. Let's take Merz, recently used, and I'm going longer than I wanted on this video for a country that I have little connection to. All right. So Merz on the outside, Alice on the inside. It's only because Venus is going to station in Aries to retrograde, and that looks like a very prominent part in the charts, the chart of the nation of Germany from the reunification, close to that midheaven, on that midheaven, that I think that a woman may be taking a prominent place in the politics of Germany. I think a woman may somehow be rising to prominence in this recent election outcome. Mortal combat, right? Mars Pluto conjunction between his Mars and her Pluto. His sun, her Uranus. All right. Alice's sun. Alice's sun is squaring Merz's sun. So there really are combatants. They show up as combatants here. But who could pull it off? I mean, his Pluto on her descendant, his Pluto Jupiter on her solar descendant means formidable enemy. Hmm. Her Venus is in the ascendant territory on the ascendant of the original chart of Germany. Her Venus as a woman, her boss babe Venus in Capricorn, is on the ascendant of the original 1949 chart of Germany, for example. That is a very strong placement for her. Whereas in the Leo ascendant of the reunification chart, Jupiter and Pluto for the Mers guy, but Jupiter and Pluto are not that personal, right? And that puts his sun, the Mers character from the Leo ascendant of the reunification chart of Germany, it puts his sun in the fourth house of the nation, which keeps his sun in the place of the opposition party. Ultimately, I'm going to say that Alice's chart is stronger for a long game power play within the nation of Germany. I don't know. My feeling, I'm going to go with the tarot card call. I'm stuck. I'm stuck. She may be somebody to take the AfD party into a place that is unexpectedly popular. And because I know that all of these parties running against each other means it's going to be a minority government. Okay, I get that. So that means that who does the winning, like say Merz wins, he's got to pile up some coalition, right? He's got to create a coalition. And he says he won't be a coalition with AfD, but nor with Scholz. That's not going to work. So there can be a way that somehow this AfD party surprises people and comes into a position where it can create a coalition, the shock of the tower. The shock of the tower. Her sun on the ascendant of the original chart of the nation of Germany. Now, I don't know anything else but to say that her chart looks better than Merz. And she's in an 11th house perfection age, which is also to take the rewards and gains and the public popular appeal. This can be like victory, swift, new beginnings, and a shock. Okay. So surprisingly possible that unbeknownst to the pollsters that Germany will elect this Tino and Alice combo AfD party at enough votes for it to create a coalition, for it to be the one with the most votes, to be the leader of a minority party. There you go. And Merz could be in second place, but he looks like he's always going to be an opponent to Alice. Like they're always going to be grinding against each other. So I doubt very much if they got a minority government, they could create a coalition with the Merz people. And I don't think what I'm saying is what's expected. And I could be wrong. This is the best I can do without birth times. All right, guys, that's What in the World Wednesday, recorded on February 17th. I think maybe the AfD will have a surprise and shock people by what turns out to be a polling a tower-like experience where surprisingly the people prefer the more radical position of the AfD rather than the Merz Christian coalition, maybe government, Christian Democrat, whatever they're called. He says, well, I'm going to move to the right. Like this is happening in Canada. Trudeau resigns, and now Carney and Chrystia Freeland are taking on all of the policies. They're running to be the person to go against our conservative contender, Pierre Poilievre, who was going to slam dunk win the election as of like 4 months ago. But now we're in new waters, and I still think they're going to win. And now our Liberal Party is taking all of the policies, like axe the carbon tax, and do things that the Conservative Party were advocating for the last 3 or 4 years. And now they're just stealing all those ideas and saying, don't worry, we'll do the thing that the other party said they do. But a lot of Canadians aren't that easily shysted out. You know what I mean? And so I think when Merz is saying, well, we need to move to the conservative or to the right, we need to accommodate that. It's the will of the people, I guess. Maybe the people won't believe Merz, right? Maybe they'll be like, you'll just be like Scholz and Angela Merkel. We'll be just back in that centrist land that we don't want. So maybe the people are too suspicious of it just being a way to win the vote rather than an authentic platform for the Merz people and his party. That's my take on it. Let's see what happens. Boy, it's like a soccer game. All right. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, like, subscribe. And this is coming out Wednesday, but tomorrow, how Mars going direct for your sign individually in a rare, not seen since 77, 78 way. And before that, 45, 46 is coming out. So get ready for that. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thank you, guys.